A generation of Americans fought for America. Then a generation of Americans built America. Seniors are that generation. Welcome to Frankly Seniors, the show with you in mind. We will bring you lively talk, insightful guests, and resources to change your world. Frankly Seniors is your show. Get ready to enter your world. Here are your hosts, Frank and Ninon.
Hello there, senior community, and welcome to Frankly Seniors. I'm your host, Frank Hellring, and alongside of me is my hostess with the mostest, Ninon de Vera Rosa. How you doing, Ninon?
Oh my goodness, I'm totally in my element. Number one, because Montel is here. But there's something I want to tell you. Something I want to tell both of you is that many years ago, I started a show called Voices of Tomorrow for the teenagers. I did that for 16 years in Los Angeles. Then I moved to Vegas and I did another show, which was called Vegas Live with Ninon. And that was all the entertainers and everything else. And now I have been given the gift of doing Frankly Seniors. So now I've moved from the teenagers to the middles, and now I'm in the seniors, and I'm just in my element. And it's just absolutely amazing. And all because of you, Frank. This is materialized.
Well, I'll tell you what's interesting about that, Ninon, is the fact that you don't have to get in front of a makeup mirror and worry about every single wrinkle right before you come on the show.
No, I don't. I can just be me.
And that's comic relief for every other senior lady out there that's listening to the show or seeing us right now. Well, I'll tell you what, Ninon, as we always start out, and we did this with Business Buzz, we've got a heart for veterans. And in November of 2022, I did a show on Voice America that was hooked into Whistleblowers of America, which you see on CNN and C-SPAN. There's been a lot of veteran movement through that particular nonprofit because the owner is retired in the United States Army. And during that show, we surfaced a guest by the name of Bruce Sackman. And Bruce Sackman was former Inspector General out of West Virginia. And one day he's sitting at his desk, he gets a phone call from a veterans hospital asking him to come out and do an investigation because the doctor out there believed that veterans were being murdered in their beds. And that basically absolutely stopped me in my tracks. We pulled the show, we went dark, and then we came back and did it again. And that actually birthed veteranmurders.com. So if you go to veteranmurders.com, you will see all that you need to know about what Bruce Sackman uncovered in the early 2000s. He's still out there. We could certainly bring him back on the show, but let me tell you something right now. If you're a veteran and you hear my voice, if you know a veteran and hear my voice, or you care about veterans, and you dang well should, you need to go to veteranmurders.com today and find out what you don't know about the fact that veterans, your warriors, your men and women that pick up a weapon, go out to a far-flung battlefield, defend your freedoms and the rights in oppressive situations in that country, when they are at their most vulnerable and veteran hospitals, are being taken out of this world without their knowledge. So go to veteranmurders.com today and find out what you don't know. Well, we have joining us today just an absolute, I consider to be icon in the live talk show industry. Montel Williams has evolved from a media celebrity, revered for over 17 years on the Montel Williams Show, into a multifaceted figure with endeavors spanning across television hosting, authorship, entrepreneurship, advocacy, and motivational speaking. Montel Williams is notably recognized for his military service, having begun his career in the United States Marine Corps, subsequently becoming the first African-American to attend the Naval Academy prep school. He's a graduate from the United States Naval Academy and commissioned as an officer. He continues to make an impact in his current role as the host of Military Makeover with Montel on Lifetime, a heartwarming series dedicated to renovating the homes of military families. Montel Williams is a prolific author, currently completing his 9th book entitled The Sailing of the Intrepid, which will be published on May 20th, 2025 by Hanover Square Press. The book recounts the harrowing tale of the USS Intrepid's first combat voyage during World War II, forced to improvise a 3,000-foot sail after a Japanese torpedo left the ship vulnerable. The crew's ingenuity and resilience shine in this inspiring narrative. His acting pursuits have seen him grace screens in notable shows like The Resident, All My Children, Guiding Light, for which he received the NAACP Image Award nomination. Montel Williams' military accolades, including his 2 meritorious service medals, 2 Navy Commendation Medals, 2 Navy Achievement Medals, among others. He is just not a public figure, but a beacon of resilience, advocacy, and service, continually seeking to inspire and make a tangible impact on this world. Montel Williams, welcome to Frankly Seniors.
Thank you so much for having me, sir. Thank you both.
We are so happy to have you here. I almost feel like I'm in the presence of a peer. And the reason being is because you were one of the almost originators of live talk show on TV in the, basically in the association of Phil Donahue, Geraldo Rivera, Ricky Lane, Sally Jesse Raphael, and dare I say, you were on the air still when Johnny Carson was on the air. Absolutely amazing, right? Congratulations.
It was a crazy time. Matter of fact, I literally started before Ricky Lake. My show was on with Oprah, Sally, Geraldo, and Donahue. We were the 5 talk shows that back then. Regis and Kelly, or Regis and Kathy, weren't even considered a talk show. So my show got an opportunity to start in May of 1991, and it was after me that year. I'll take you down a little trip down memory lane. Ronald Reagan Jr. had a talk show. Chuck Woolery and let's see, John Tesh and Lisa Gibbons had a show. And somebody by the name of Jane Pratt. That was in 91. Then it wasn't until the following year that Ricky Lake got her show, and then the plethora of talk shows began. So, but in the time that I had my shows on the air, over 126 other talk shows came and went.
That's amazing. Well, you almost said, he set the pace, Ninon, right? Well, anyway, Ninon has been... Yeah, Ninon was on for 17 years doing children's shows, so I'm going to turn the interview over to her because you basically guys are almost like colleagues. Go ahead, Ninon.
Yeah, we will actually. Well, yes, I have Voices of Tomorrow, and the reason I did that show because I came from sort of kind of nothing, and sort of I knew all the ropes and everything and how to do it all, and I thought to help other children, why don't I just let them know my story and give them a voice, give them a platform. And I think you also did the same thing, Montel, with your show. You gave people an incredible opportunity to be out there, to be somebody. But it seems all through your life, you have always put the other person first before you. And you've always sort of gone that route. But first of all, what I want to do is that you come from Baltimore. You were born in Baltimore, right?
Correct. Baltimore, Maryland. Yes, ma'am. I grew up in I was born in Baltimore. We spent the first 6 years of my life there and then moved into a suburb right south of the city called Glen Burnie. And I stayed there until I graduated from high school and then entered the Marine Corps.
Yeah. And then I believe your father, who was a fireman, but became chief fireman. And your background from your father seems to have waved over onto you to achieve.
Well, yeah, my father, when I was growing up, my father probably, he had anywhere from 3 to 4 jobs at any given time. He was a firefighter, but he was also a bus driver. He was also a carpenter. He was also a musician. And he ended up going to college for almost 17 years before he got his degree. But he did it all in night school and got his degree. He went on to become the Commissioner of Transportation, the Commissioner of Public Works, and then the Chief of the Fire Department in Baltimore City. First African-American chief of a major city fire department in America.
Absolutely amazing. Now, because he was so successful with all the hard work he did you kind of follow in his footsteps as to saying to yourself, if I work as hard and I do as good a job, I can get there as well?
Well, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Not only because of him, but my mother. My mother also worked at times 3 jobs at a time. So both of them instilled a work ethic in me early on, and they also instilled an ethic for education. That was my father. And when I was growing up, I'll never forget his mantra was, "That's your only job. Get your grades up. That's your only job. Get your grades up." So, it was an important aspect of my life, and that work ethic, I think, turned into this drive that I've had, and never faltered.
Yeah,
Montel is amazing. Yeah, Montel is amazing, because I was born in Washington, D.C. in 1952. And so like in the shadow of Baltimore, right? So I was sitting there thinking to myself when I read that you were born in Baltimore, I said, my goodness, were we in RFK Stadium at one time watching the Senators against the Orioles, right? Yeah,
maybe. Way back then it was Memorial Stadium up in northern Baltimore where the Orioles played all the time. And, as a kid, I tell you, I probably went to D.C. at least. That was the Maryland schools school trip location. So 4 times a year,
Absolutely.
you went down to Washington, D.C., Smithsonian, for parades, all kinds of stuff. Yeah,
Yep,
real close to me.
absolutely. Yeah, I was
Now
a
you
big
have
Senators fan back then.
yeah. Now
Go
you
ahead,
have
Nina.
4 children. You have 4 children. Are they following in your footsteps, and are you sort of helping them along this rocky road of how it is today?
Well, I'm glad we're on a show where people out there will recognize I have 4 children, but they're all grown adults, and they all have their own desperate, different lifestyle. I mean, I've got a son who graduated from UNLV, got a degree in sports medicine. He's in the medical industry. I've got a daughter who went to one of the number one makeup schools in New York. She's in New York. She's a makeup artist in the New York and Northeast area. I got another daughter who's a dancer. She lives in Houston. I have 4 kids all over the country, and I have another daughter who lives in South Carolina. So, and all of them, really work very, very hard and diligently to pursue their own dreams, and I'm so proud of them.
I can't
Now we're
imagine
going
what
to
Christmas is like, right? For you.
I
It's
can imagine what it's
insane.
like.
It's insane. The last couple of years has been insane because it's just kind of tough to get everybody's schedule together so we can all get together.
That's
Absolutely. Now
hard.
you came straight
Now
out of high school, right? And went into the Marine
Yes,
Corps.
yes. I
Okay,
came out of high
and
school
then
in the Marine Corps, enlisted, and when I entered the Marine Corps, I went through Parris Island, South Carolina. I fortunately got merit choice promoted 3 times or 2 times in a row. Once coming out of boot camp, another time one of my first duty station. That's what afforded me the opportunity to go to the Naval Academy Prep School. And in your intro, you said the first Black Marine to go to the Naval Academy Prep School. I was not the first one to go to the prep school. I was the first one to go to the prep school, graduate from the academy, and be commissioned as a naval officer. So it's a little
Wow.
bit of a different, but yes. And I entered the prep school with 40 other Marines. Only 19 of us graduated. Only 11 of us got appointed to the academy, and only 4 of us graduated. So 90% attrition rate, but I made it.
that's
So
absolutely amazing. I've actually walked that ground in Annapolis, Montel, many times, and in fact, we do business with the company back there. That's actually in the overseeing of the academy at any one given time from their windows. Montel, let me ask you a question. What was that transition like from the Marine Corps to the U.S. Navy?
It was kind of insane. It was insane, but at the same time, it was a good transition. Coming out of the Marine Corps enlisted, entering the Naval Academy, the prep school and the Naval Academy, I already had the military instilled in me. I entered a class with a lot of kids who, with less than 100 of us had any experience in the military. So, that experience helped to get me through, the tough and dark times, but I made it through. And then I served as a special duty intelligence officer. I did every platform that the U.S. Navy has, from submarines to aircraft carriers to destroyers to you name it. I have over 320 days under the water and over 600 days on the water.
You
wow.
might remember this, but there was a Lieutenant Colonel John Ripley buried at Annapolis. He was a Marine. Okay,
Sure.
served in Vietnam, hung off the Dong Ha Bridge. In fact, there's a huge picture at the academy, right, of him hanging off that bridge.
Sure.
And I thought it was very interesting in the fact that, we called him the Audie Murphy of the Marine Corps when we actually did that movie because that guy was absolutely amazing. And what was amazing when I saw his funeral, every midshipman on that ground snapped a salute when his hearse went by on the way to his graveside. And so
Absolutely.
I can't even imagine what it must have been like for you in 4 years in Annapolis. I mean, I would think that that's got to be a memory imprint on you that's going to take you all the way home.
Absolutely. But then again, I also, the academy was great. I love my time that was there. It was extremely challenging. It's still listed as, I think, the number 3 college in the United States of America. We have way ahead of West Point, by the way. But I'm just saying that. Uh, you know, um, we had I'll take you on a little trip down memory lane. Back when I went to the academy, everyone was required to have at least 19 hours a semester minimum. You go to colleges across the country right now, most people don't even do more than 7 hours a semester. I'm telling you, 19 hours a semester. And it was arduous. However, I got through and graduated from the academy. A very, very interesting thing. We can get into it later if you want. But right before graduation, unbeknownst to myself and the military hospitals and doctors, I probably had my first episode or bout of MS. because right before I graduated, I got put in a medical hold because of some severe things that had happened to me, stopping me from going back into the Marine Corps and stopping me from going and pursuing what I really wanted to be, which was a naval pilot, a Marine Corps pilot. That's what I wanted to be. But I went through a really, about a 6-week period of time where my health was like, I just went berserk and no one could figure out what it was. And it took 20 years for me to be diagnosed later. But when I graduated, I ended up getting a commission. And at the time, they called that commission NPQ, which was not physically qualified, which is crazy because that was supposed to give me a job that, didn't take me to sea and would not deploy me. However, I selected one of two choices that they gave me. It was either supply corps or special intelligence. And the reason why I picked that was because I had studied Chinese while at the academy. So since I had a propensity to languages, they literally snapped me up and sent me to the Defense Language Institute to study Russian. So I got a degree in Russian at the Defense Language Institute, and then went on to serve as a special duty intelligence officer.
Well, I'd like to pick it up right there after our first commercial break here, Montel, but we do have to move towards that. You're listening to Frankly Seniors with Frank and Ninon, and we've got Montel Williams alongside of us today. Listen, if you are a business out there today, or you are a senior who's looking for a resource, you need to go to CaliforniaSeniorGuide.com right now. That's the website address, and dial it up. You'll get a pop-up box that says, "We need your email." Put it in there because that's going to roster you as a member of the magazine. And if you're a business and you want to get in the pages of this incredible publication that basically represents about, oh my goodness, 13,000 people a day turning 65 years old in this country every single day. I mean, can you imagine how big that marketplace is? If you're a business out there today, you need to go to CaliforniaSeniorGuide.com right now, and they'll tell you how to get a quarter-page ad or a half-page ad or a full-page ad like we've got in that magazine, and you need to do it today. Well, we've been mixing it up with Montel Williams. Ninon by my side. It doesn't get any better than that. We'll be right back in 2 and 2 with more Frankly Seniors for you. Hey, we're back. You're with Frankly Seniors with Frank and Ninon, and we've got Montel Williams with us today. Montel, before we went to the commercial break, you talked about some of the struggles you had in the Navy as far as your multiple sclerosis condition and whatnot. Would you like to kind of elaborate on that for us a little bit?
Well, what was crazy is that, again, if you go back to when I literally had my first episode of bout with MS, which was probably in 1979. Back then, in the physician's desk reference, if they looked up MS, it said a disease that mostly affected women of Northern European descent. Okay, so here I am, an African American male, getting ready to graduate from the Naval Academy. I was in probably the shape of my life, and I'm demonstrating so many symptoms that nobody could explain. Well, part of the reason for that is because of my family lineage. My mother happens to be half Caucasian. Her mother was from Scotland, and her father was African American, and through her, that gene probably came through, skipped a generation, and hit me. And it took doctors almost 20 years to diagnose me. And throughout my entire military career, I literally had, almost every 3 to 4 months, 5 months, I was going to the doctor trying to figure out what the heck's wrong with my shoulder, what's the heck's wrong with my leg, what's the heck's wrong with my hips, my back, my this, my that. No one could explain it. And I used to be a competitive bodybuilder. And so back in the day, I weighed well over 215, 220, close to 220. And every time I would go see a doctor, they would say, well, stop putting all that heavy weight on your back and you feel better. So they kept blaming it on, the fact that I was lifting, hundreds of pounds, squatting, deadlifting, those kinds of things. So, I was fortunate though that, the way it affected me was more from a visual standpoint and a neuropathic pain standpoint, not as, I don't know, I not as virulent as some people have it. So
how is the condition? How is your condition now? Is it completely gone, or does it reoccur, or do you have to be careful or still exercise?
Oh, absolutely. I am right now. I'm lucky. I'm fortunate. I have not had a bout, knock on wood, for the last almost 4.5, 5 years,
Wow.
and my disease has been very stable. However, I still have symptoms that I deal with almost on a daily basis, and I should say on a daily basis. However, you know what I mean? I'm one of those people who feel like, and I feel this way, I feel very strongly about it. I have MS. MS is never going to have me. So I do everything I can to see if I can counterbalance some of the effects.
I want to
Which
ask you a question. Your transition from all what Frank and you have been talking about and your transition into show business, how did that all occur? And did you just want to get messages out there, or how did all that start?
It's really kind of crazy. Back in 1988, 3 years before I started a talk show, I started a program with another a naval officer where we were going around the schools for a little while, and then I started doing it by myself. I traveled around the country going to schools, speaking to kids during my vacation time and leave time about negative youth trends. And that became a focal point and a focus of a lot of local television stations. I mean, I was literally one of the only people, I was the only person in the country that would literally walk into a school, put all the teachers out of the auditorium, have the student body in their 11th to 12th grade, and I'd speak to them for an hour. And they received it very well. It got featured on everything from NBC Nightly News to the Today Show to That's Incredible to Incredible Sundays. It kept being featured around the country, and I ended up winning for a couple of them. A couple of stations came out and actually filmed my entire presentation. Gannett did so, and my presentation won the Best of Gannett Award. And I'll tell you a very funny story. If you remember the motion picture Glory,
Corey,
you
yeah,
remember that?
sure.
Oh yeah.
Okay. That motion picture Glory was done by a guy by the name of Freddie Fields, and Freddie unfortunately has passed away.
I know Freddie
But
Fields, yeah.
Freddie passed away, and Freddie was literally what happened was in 1990, Columbia TriStar and Pepsi teamed up to send that motion picture in a DVD to every high school in America as part of Black History Month. And they had reached out to see if they could get one of the actors in it to actually do a lead to it so they could introduce the movie to students. None of the actors wanted to do it. I happened to have Pepsi as one of my sponsors for my national tour. During a period of time, but that 3-year period of time, I spoke over, I'm telling you, I spoke to over 1.5 million students in over 1,500 high schools across the country and community centers across the country. So Pepsi was one of my sponsors. So they asked me, would you do an introduction to this movie? And I said, yeah, I'll do it. So I did this introduction. It was a really good one. They put it on the front of the tape, sent it out to all these schools. They sent a copy to Freddie Fields. Freddie Fields looked at that tape and saw me on that tape and said, hey, pal, he called up my office. Hey, pal, what are you doing on my movie? Who are you? Where did you get this from? And I said, whoa. So, what now, my friend? He said, well, I saw that little clip you did, and it looks pretty good. I need to talk to you. Why don't you come on out here to Hollywood? I flew out to Hollywood on Christmas Eve, 1990. Had a meeting with Freddie Fields that day. I was trying to fly back home to be with my family. The next day, I ended up getting trapped by bad weather across the country. But anyway, by January of 91, Freddie Fields had teamed up with then Herman Rush. I don't know if you know that name.
Mm-hmm.
Herman Rush,
Yes.
Freddie Fields got together. They literally started approaching every single syndicator out there because not only had I done that, I also had done a show that was called The Fourth R, Kids Rap About Racism in Denver, Colorado, that won an Emmy. And I won an Emmy as the best talk show, so I wasn't a member of Natus. And he knew that, so he went around and said, look, I think I got something really different. I got a guy who kind of talks to not only, the regular age people, but he also talks to kids. So I think we ought to try to see if we can put together a show. By April of 91, I signed my contract. May 8th of 91, I went on air and we never looked back.
Wow, what a story. I think most people will love that story because how do you start? I mean, how does anybody start in anything? Yours is a long story of how you started and sort of, it's sort of caught on but you and I have both been interactive with the younger generation. I did it for 16 years, talking to kids in schools and having them on my show. Right, Frank?
And now he's an author. Let's talk about your book, Montel. I got about 5 minutes to go to commercial. I want to dive right into it. I mean, you've done many books, but this one's very unique. What motivated you to talk about an American U.S. aircraft carrier during World War II?
Well, I'm going to tell you something. I spent probably in the last 20 years, I had been on and off the Intrepid no less than 15 times. I'm a board member of a trustee of the Fisher House, the Fisher Foundation. the Fisher family, a lot of people don't know this, but one of the uncles of the Fisher Foundation family literally purchased the Intrepid and helped to put it. Zachary Fisher bought the Intrepid before it was to be scrapped, and asked back then, I think it was Mayor Koch, if he could make a museum out of it and put it along the West Side Highway. And Mayor Koch agreed as long as they could pull together the funding to regentrify the entire area. And he said he could, and they did. What ended up happening was David Fisher, who is my co-author, David was thinking about this and thinking about writing a book on the Intrepid, but didn't have as much access. And so he reached out to me and said, what do you know about the Intrepid? And I told him, oh, the Intrepid's got an incredible story. And he told me some other things that had happened to the Intrepid that I didn't even know. And we decided to team up and write this book. And so I reached out to Ken Fisher, who is the head of the Fisher Foundation, and also the head, one of the head trustees for the Intrepid, reached out to Ken, who happens to have written one of the forewords in the book. And Ken said, if you're going to do that, you have unfettered access. And so that gave us unfettered access. And between I and David, we literally hired on a couple of researchers because there was a lot of research that went into this book, and started digging into archives all over the country. And we found some diaries for some of the sailors, and we found some family members of some of the sailors that were on board. And then the story grew. And what we really wanted to do was to tell not only the story of the Intrepid, but the story and the history of naval aviation, which seems like an oxymoron because at the time when the Intrepid was built, nobody actually believed in aircraft carriers other than the United States. The rest of the world didn't really believe in them, didn't think that they would actually function well, because how can you land a plane on a postage stamp in the water? But they ended up doing so. And, a lot of people don't know this. There was a professor, Samuel Langley, who was the director of the Smithsonian Institute. He put together an airplane 2 weeks before the Wright brothers, almost 2 months before the Wright brothers made their first maiden flight with a powered plane. He flew an airplane off of the deck of a makeshift deck of a ship in the Potomac. So we realized then that it would be an incredible way to project sea power if, in fact, you could have planes that first were going to be used to scout the enemy, and then they realized that they could actually carry weapons and bombs to the enemy, and that changed warfare forever.
Was the Intrepid actually hit by an air attack, or was it hit by a submarine?
No, it was hit by an air attack. What ended up happening was Intrepid got commissioned late 43, went into service in 44, went to the North Pacific, had one of the most successful battles during World War II at the Marshall Islands against Kwajalein, then went on to actually destroy all of Truk Island, which was one of the biggest tonnage destruction that the U.S. Navy delivered on the Japanese. And when it was leaving the Truk harbor, and a lone aircraft, literally, that they had caught on then very, very basic and rudimentary radars, literally was just searching and searching and searching and searching. And that single Japanese aircraft saw the trail that was in the water by the Intrepid, followed it, dropped the torpedo. And even in the book, we talk about the fact that a couple of the crew members of the Intrepid saw the face of the Japanese pilot as it flew over the deck right before the torpedo hit. And the torpedo hit the ship right in its rudder and caught the fantail of the ship, ripping a hole in it from the waterline all the way up to the flight deck. It was a devastating blow that it took. And you had mentioned it earlier, we had talked about this off camera earlier, that there was one of the biggest ships ever built by the German Navy was something called the Bismarck. And everyone in the world feared the Bismarck. But the Bismarck was actually sunk the same way. It was struck by a torpedo, jammed its rudder, made it sit dormant in the water, and then the British Royal Navy went in with their airplanes and destroyed it. The same thing then happened again to the Yorktown. Yorktown being in the same class of the Essex class carrier, same class of ship as the Intrepid. So it really, torpedoes in the rudder sent fears and chills up the spines of every ship captain out there. And this particular captain, whose name is Captain Sprague, tried everything he could to steer the ship. He was using the engines, moving forward and aft, and he could really gain no real steerage unless it was going really, really slow. And but the one thing that he did do before the ship was even commissioned was that he actually was the person who instilled the idea of damage control training in the U.S. Navy, because he really forced this ship while it was on its, shakedown cruises in the Atlantic to train. They even trained for the possibility of what would happen if the rudder was jammed. They trained that. So when it happened for real, he was really kind of ready, and they had a ship that was ready and a crew that was ready to do whatever it takes to save the ship, because they did not want the Japanese to be able to claim that they sunk the biggest warship the U.S. military had.
And he turned a United States warship, a USS carrier, into a sailboat. That's absolutely, I mean, that alone is a reason to buy this book.
Well, and I got to tell you something. Not only did they, here's what they did. They didn't use the sail. The sail wasn't used for any propulsion. The sail was used to counterbalance the waves and the currents that kept shifting the ship in the wrong direction. So they put the sail on the front of the ship so that no matter, the winds would catch that, keep the bow headed forward. And when the bow was headed forward, they ended up sailing the ship back 3,000 miles. And you say that's the only reason why? Let me tell you something. They got it back to Honolulu, to Hawaii, and the executive officer asked Captain Sprague, should we take the sail down? He said no. They sailed it into Honolulu so everybody could see it. They probably shut down the entire island, seeing this thing come in, this huge, massive ship, almost 3 football fields long, coming in with a big sail in front of it. It left Hawaii to go to San Francisco to be put in dry dock, and it lost steerage again. So Captain Sprague had to do everything he could to keep it from hitting the Golden Gate Bridge. He did so, went into dry dock. Watch this. 3 months in dry dock, went back into service, went back to the North Pacific. It was one of the first ships to get hit by a kamikaze, got hit by 2 of them. Had to go back into the dry dock, repaired, came back into service, got hit by 3 kamikazes. Went back into dry dock, went back into service, finished all of World War II, went on to serve during Vietnam, went on to serve as the NASA NASA as a recovery ship for our space aircraft that came back and hit the water.
Montel, I would love to see. I would love to see the decorations in the wheelhouse of that ship. It must be absolutely amazing. Okay, of that particular boat. Anyway, we got to move to a commercial, unfortunately. You're listening to Frankly Seniors with Ninon DeVita-Rosa. We've got Montel Williams alongside of us. Listen, we're going to put up basically a call to arms right now. Dan, put that image up right now of the United States Marine Corps, please.
That's it. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, listen, folks, we need you, okay? We need a strong military in this country. So if you're motivated right now to go out and serve your country, and believe me, I did a lot of reading about Montel Williams, and he believes in this wholeheartedly, in the fact that if you're a member of the military, you're serving your country at the best possible, level that you can possibly be an American to defend the freedoms that you are entitled to in this country. But are you really entitled? No. Everybody pays a price for freedom in the United States of America at some level. And Montel paid it at the Marine Corps level. He paid it at the United States Naval level. And let me tell you something. If you haven't got a career in mind, or you don't have a direction in your life, there isn't any better place right now than to go to the Marines and become a Marine. So we want to see you do that. So you've been listening to Frank and Ninon and Montel Williams. We're going to be right back in 2 and 2 after our advertisers have a chance to take a look at you with more of Frankly Seniors. Hey, we're back. You are with Frank Hellring and Ninon DeVita-Rosa. This is Frankly Seniors. We've got Montel Williams, in my opinion, an icon in live talk host TV. My goodness, just take a look at his memory lane and you'll see that he's absolutely flown higher than a lot of people ever possibly imagined in his realm. But Montel, we're talking about sailing, of the Intrepid. And I'll tell you what, I'm so intrigued with this. I'll tell you why. Because a good friend of mine served on the United States carrier Ticonderoga during Vietnam. And that ship sailed up an inland river in Vietnam to be the landing zone for the Tet Offensive, right? And I won't belabor
Yes.
the point, but the North Vietnamese loosed God knows how many sorties. I think it was 71 against that carrier, and not one bullet hit the flight deck. So
Yep.
a United States aircraft carrier is probably the most valuable ship in the fleet. One question I would have, she is disabled, right? She's in the middle of
Yes.
the Pacific, okay? How much aid came to her? I mean, you got a whole fleet out there. Did they escort her back or what?
Here's what happened. She and the Intrepid, along with the Essex and two or three other, one other aircraft carrier, were in the largest armada that the U.S. military had ever put together. The carriers were in the middle, and of course they had destroyers and all kinds of other ships around them, submarines, all kind of trying to protect them. When she got hit by the rudder, she almost ran into the Essex, missed the Essex by meters, not tens of meters, meters. They almost ran into each other. That would have been one of the most devastating collisions at sea in the history of naval warfare. Um, but the aircraft are on board, and the aircraft of the other carriers were what was her protection while they were getting there together. And then they of course they sailed dark. This was completely lights out because they didn't want to have another Japanese fighter find them. And so headed back, I think they discharged or let two of the destroyers accompany her back, and they got her all the way back 3,000 miles to Honolulu and then on to San Francisco. So I mean, but this is a story. Let me tell you, Father's Day is coming up, and I'm not just Ninon, I'm not just saying this for men, but there are a lot of guys our age are history buffs and military war buffs, and I tell you, this is the perfect gift to give a father who's interested in any kind of combat, especially World War II, because this fills in a lot of blanks, and it fills in a lot of blanks not only about the Intrepid itself, but about methods of warfare and what we were doing at the time. So that's
Well,
why I'm really, really.
I love what you said, Montel, about the women, but also the women. They have their fathers and their grandfathers,
Right.
and so this actually, I think women are getting more into this. This is why I'm here, because obviously I'm a woman, and to get the word out about how women feel about this. They might not be. I mean, there are some women, obviously, in the Marines. I would think. I don't know, but I would imagine.
Yes, there are.
But also, yeah, of course there are. And they also want to be mentioned. They want to be seen. They want to let their name out there, or whatever they do, they want that out there. But my question to you now is the Intrepid, and we're talking about this. So what is the modern ship today? I mean, today they've got these incredible ships, these incredible, what's going on in this world that we don't really hear much about. Maybe you can update us a little bit on that.
Well, I mean, now aircraft carriers are almost four football fields long, and
Yeah.
they are some of the most advanced technology that the U.S. Navy has. They are the most advanced technology floating in the seas these days. Whenever you hear of any incident that takes place right now in the Middle East, you hear of the aircraft carriers that are sitting off the coast, because those are the ones that
Yes,
are
you do.
providing
Yeah.
air support. They're the ones that are providing air support in and around any conflict that we have. They are the projection of our sea power. Right now, the Intrepid itself, I don't know if you know this, but it sits along the West Side Highway in New York City. It is the Air and Space Museum, and Airspace Sea Museum. I was just on it 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, doing a book signing on there. It's an incredible opportunity. If you ever go in the New York area, you should put that on your list. As it receives over 1.5 million visitors a year.
Well,
Yeah.
well, Bull
But I
Break
think this is
TV
really,
obviously is in New York, Montel. So sooner or later we're going to get back there. Let me ask you a
Sure.
question: have you met any of the sailors that were on the Intrepid at that time?
Unfortunately, I think there's maybe only one survivor left off from that actually lived through this instance.
Wow.
So, but we were able to reach out to Captain Sprague's family. As a matter of fact, his family reached back to us. I just got an email a couple of days ago from one of the executive officers' sons, who thanked us for writing the book. He sent me a really nice note. I and David a really nice note, and it was really just a pleasure to understand that I think we did justice to his father's story the way he wanted it done.
I think this is so important. I mean, if you listen to the lead in that we put together on this show, we said that, the generation, the greatest generation, fought for America, right? And then we said that there was a generation that came behind it, the baby boomers, who built America. And I think it's amazing how these two generations basically complement each other. But I think it's so important to have this type of copy going out, Montel, because the kids of today don't really understand the price that's been paid, for their freedoms, they just don't.
No, sir.
Well,
And
nobody knows. Nobody.
even though the kids of today have many peers who have served through the last 10, 12 years of war that we've gone through. But unfortunately, this book is a story about how remember, there were over 3,000 sailors on this ship. Over 3,000 back in the day when we couldn't where ships were not built to hold this many people. But we had 3,000 people on board the ship. And they came from all walks of life all over America. And they came together rather than divided. They came together to solve a problem, to make sure that they took care of keeping this thing out of the hands of the Japanese and giving them a war prize, but also to be able to help support and defend our democracy. As we live through the times we're living in right now, where we seem to have a divided nation, this is an example of what America can do when we come together.
Well, I think
And this
it's,
is
I
what
think it's,
you're doing, Montel.
yeah, I think it's,
Montel, you're putting all this. Yeah, you're putting all this together, Montel, and you're giving back history of what we need today. We need this whole thing to come together. Like as you talk about the sailors, they had to be friendly with each other, and then they were friendly with each other, and they helped each other. We don't have that today. We have the total opposite. So I think this book, which I think, not only the older generation, I think the younger generation should definitely read this book, but also to go to the museum and go to the ship in New York to see history of what we used to be. And actually, this is what Frankly Seniors is all about, is bringing them back out, bringing their stories out, so we can understand a little bit of how we can communicate together, especially for the younger generation. And you've been very involved in the younger generation. What do you think of the younger generation now, Montel?
I think I'm sorry if I say it this way, and it's not an aspersion, but unfortunately, too many people have left their kids to be raised by electronic things and raised by things that aren't real. We don't spend the time that we used to spend together. That's right. We spend more time on those stupid things than we do actually listening and communicating. I mean, unfortunately, it's crazy that we don't respect those who have been here before us, who have so much to tell us, to teach us about how we can proceed. But remember that old saying, you never know where you're going unless you know where you've been.
That's right. Absolutely. And I think, and the older
Ninon actually
generation-
came up with the theme for this show, which you see in our show description. Ninon, why don't you tell them that story, how you came up with that one word that really epitomizes what we're doing here?
Well, what we're doing is the older generation. I love my grandmothers, both of them, my father and my mother. My grandmothers helped me, and they gave me stories. They didn't give me the same message my mom and dad gave me. They gave me different messages, which they were never against me. They were for me. They were helping me. And that's what grandmothers and grandfathers do. And I think in this generation, unfortunately, what I see is the older generation are forgotten. And why should they be forgotten? They've got the greatest history in the world going on. I mean, they're the ones that move forward. And I think with this book that you brought out, Sailing in the Intrepid, I think that's going to help a tremendous amount of our younger generation, as well as the older generation, of what really happened in this day and age.
I agree with you 100%. I do not think that we can take a step in the forward direction without recognizing where we stepped yesterday.
I keep asking myself, Montel, I mean, when Pearl Harbor occurred, right? I mean, all over America, Uncle Sam needs you, right? In front of every recruiting office from coast to coast, right? When's the last time we saw Uncle Sam needs you in the military? I mean, did the kids even understand what their image is?
We barely see commercials that are recruiting commercials anymore. I just saw one for the first time in a couple of weeks, about a day or two ago, and I was a little angry because I can remember when I graduated from school, they used to allow recruiters to come into the school to do sessions. They don't even do that anymore. So unfortunately, and please forgive me for saying it this way, But America may be looking at already having seen its best days if we don't start thinking about how we preserve what we have. And we preserve that through military strength. We preserve that through protection. We preserve that. And it's not all about fighting. I mean, there are 10-year, 20-year, every 10 years there's a war that we get deeply involved in, but there's 10 years that go by where we don't. But during that 10 years, there's discipline being taught. There is cohesiveness being taught. There is teamwork being taught. There is technology being taught. Most people in this country don't even recognize the fact that you said it. We had the greatest generation that saved this country. We had the next generation of baby boomers who built this country. Well, a lot of the baby boomers were capable of building this country because they had military service. They got the GI Bill. If they didn't use the GI Bill, they gave it to their kids. We had more people go through college in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s than we've ever had in America. Why? Because they were relying on the GI Bill that they got during World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. So we have to recognize that the service that our service members provide to America isn't just carrying a gun and fighting. It's called, innovation. It's called, discipline. It's called, all those things.
Communication is great.
Correct.
Communication
Montel,
is
I'll tell you, the way you came to us was California Senior Guide magazine. And I've had a relationship with them on my previous show. They sponsored my other show on Voice America for 4 years. We have an ongoing relationship. You mentioned Lisa Gibbons at the outset of the show. I interviewed her on Business Buzz. Massive lady, and her mother, of course, went through Alzheimer's, right, which caused her to birth a foundation for the caregivers. It's amazing how chaos and pain and agony births really good things. And Lisa did a marvelous job there. You did it with the Foundation for Multiple Sclerosis. But let me ask you a question. How did you get together with Senior Guide? Because Grace out there, and a shout out to Grace, who's the editor of California Senior Magazine, she just absolutely amazes me how she comes up with these A-listers, actors and actresses, and brings them on our shows and whatnot. But Montel, how did that happen?
They reached out to me. As soon as they reached out, I said, of course, come on now. I got to applaud the fact that I'm a senior. Look, I earned every one of these days. You know what I'm saying? I don't, it's fun. It's a very funny story. I was in a meeting, a couple of days back, and a gentleman asked me, well, Montel, how old are you? And the gentleman who asked me was, about 9 years my senior. He said, how old are you? And I went, well, I'm 58. No, wait, I'm 68. He said, did you say 58? I said, wait a second. No, I'm 68, dude. I deserve it. I own it. I earned those years, every single one of them.
Absolutely, 100%. And when you talk about the senior community, we're talking about 76 million births, my friend, in the baby boomer generation, a $75 trillion wealth transfer that's going to happen when we leave this world,
Correct.
And we get discounted, we get overlooked, we get marginalized. To me, that's one of the main reasons we started this show, Montel. And if you can carry this vision away from this show for us, you will have absolutely epitomized what we're doing here.
Yeah, but they've got all the knowledge. Yeah, the older generation have all the knowledge, all the old knowledge, how things used to work, how you said before, we were all together as one. We communicated on the ship, the Intrepid, that all the sailors got together. We're not doing that now.
But the one thing that we have to let's and this is again not an aspersion against. I'm so proud of what the two of you are doing, making sure that the word gets out. But we need more than just you, the two of you. We need you, me, and another 50, 60. We need to start demanding the fact that, how come when we look at our movies these days and all these streamers, we're the ones that are in the upstairs bedroom drunk. We're the ones that are downstairs in the basement drunk. We're the ones who aren't participating in society. Well, that's not true. You just said it. We have $78 trillion worth of not disposable, but income and revenue and resources that we're going to be able to leave behind. We should be demanding that Hollywood give us a bigger shake, tell our stories better than they've been telling them, and let us be present. Look at most of the news programs that are out there, with the exception of maybe Wolf Blitzer and maybe one other. There are no seniors that are literally representing us on a daily basis in the eyes of America. We need to start.
That's what we're here to. That's what we're here to do, Montel. Listen, in the time we got remaining, we got a little surprise for you. Okay, Dan, do me a favor. Start putting those photos up. I think you're going to enjoy this, Montel. Go ahead, Dan. Okay, first of all, who's that?
That's Lieutenant Montel Williams doing a re-enlistment ceremony on board a ship, I believe.
Absolutely cool. What's the next one, Dan? We caught you in the airport, right?
Oh my goodness, you got me cut. I think I'm in New York, maybe right there, carrying a bag
Exactly.
across the
Crossroads.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Doing what a normal thing is. Okay, Dan, do the next one. Okay. What you got to
What?
explain this one?
I'm trying to figure out what that one is. That one is myself. That's years back now. We're talking.
Yeah.
That's probably 15 years ago.
Isn't
Wow,
that
I
crazy?
can't even remember that for a second. That's cool.
Okay. Moving on, Dan. This one really got me, Montel.
Oh, that's a couple months old. That's me with my little puppy JP. I had to read her the book.
Yeah, I was wondering, are you, gauging the popularity of your book by the wagging of the tail or what?
As well, he loves to be told stories and he loves to sit in your lap. So I just decided, let me read him a little bit.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, next one, Dan. I thought you'd enjoy that, Montel.
Oh my goodness, yeah, it's the logo from the Montel Williams Show for so
The only
many
thing
years.
I'm asking myself is whose show is this anyway? But anyway,
Well, today's Montel show.
Yeah.
Montel, we got a few minutes to go on the show. Tell everybody out there how they get this marvelous book, right? And how they stay in touch with you.
It's available anywhere and everywhere you can get a book. I think it's at Barnes and Nobles. It's online. As a matter of fact, right now, Amazon, it was #1 in 3 different categories on Amazon. It was #1 in World War II history, #1 in Vietnam history, and #1 in naval history on Amazon. So, anywhere you can get a book, you can get that one.
Outstanding. The other thing is, go ahead, Ninon.
One question I need to ask. What message, because I'm into the younger generation, so aren't you, Montel? What message can you give the younger generation that are they don't know if they could go into the Marine Corps or what they can do? What message would you like to give them to help them out?
It's a message that I've lived by my entire life. You alone own the definition of who you are. No one else can tell you who you are. They can help you get to where you want to go, but they can't tell you who you are. You own that definition. So in owning that definition, don't let anybody tell you you can't do anything. I mean, there were people who probably told me, Doc, you should. I had an uncle tell me, who was a Supreme Court justice, believe it or not, said, you shouldn't leave the military for some stupid thing like helping kids to stay in, retire. And I was like, no, I want to do this because I really want to do this. That was who I was defining myself as. And then when I was very successful at doing that, I decided to leave that and start a television show. And then I decided to leave that and start working in medical initiatives. Right now, I really am working on multiple medical initiatives to help our warfighters. I'm working on a project right now that is considered one of the only cures for PTSD in the world. It's called RTM, Reconsolidation of Traumatic Memories. I'm working on another project for our warfighters. It's called the Phoenix Project, which is a neuromodulation device that helps people who have gone through traumatic brain injury and concussive brain injury. I'm working on another project that is called My Medical Images. It's a project where no matter where you got an image taken, because that's one of the only areas of medicine that has not actually evolved over the last 20 years. If you get an MRI in New York, your MRI in New York can probably not be read on an MRI machine in California. This project allows you as the patient to control all your images from your phone, tablet, or computer. So I'm working constantly to try to make lives better for our warfighters and lives better for all of us.
Montel, I would definitely we got about 3 minutes to go on the show, but I would definitely love to have you, if you're willing, to stay in touch with us, okay? So we can kind of basically co-partner with you on this, because I would love to continue to get that message out there of what you're doing, because seniors and whatnot, I mean, they're kind of removed,
Let me tell you, Frank, there is the one area we're living right now at a time where somewhere between, depending on the doctor you listen to, between 16 and 20% of America is suffering right now from PTSD. You look at the people who survived the fires in California. You look at the people who have come home from war. You look at the people who survived other devastating things, and they don't think that there's any help out there. But the help is there. It's a protocol that's called RTM, Reconsolidation of Traumatic Memories. It is 90% efficacious. 9 out of every 10 people who go through this protocol remit all their symptoms of PTSD. I'd love to come back and let's spend a little time talking about that because people need to know you don't have to suffer alone.
Montel, that is so important because they found out that 50% of seniors who are out there alone develop dementia faster than anything on the face of the earth. So what you're saying is absolutely spot on. Well, Montel, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed having you as a guest today on Frankly Seniors. Our best wishes in everything that you're doing out there. Also to your lovely wife. You've been married to a very fantastic lady. We see that, and marriage is a big thing. I'm celebrating my 33rd anniversary to my second marriage coming up in July. I lost my first wife to cancer, so I know what it is to be a spectator to somebody who's suffering. She passed away in 1991 after 22 months of battle with breast cancer. So in a sense, we kind of in the same fraternity to some degree.
Well, I'm glad you did a shout out to her because I got to do one to her too. She's really the reason why I'm here. I don't know if you know this. I suffered a stroke about 7 years ago. Had she not been there, she slept in a cot beside me for 29 days.
There you go, Montel. Wow. Unfortunately, I got to exit out of here. You've been listening to Frankly Seniors with Ninon de Rosa. Montel wins. We're so glad that you tuned in with us today. Join us next week, 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we're going to be right back in front of you with more copy about you and your world. We're going to take you into your world. That's what this show is all about. If you want to find out more about the show, you go to Certainty Live. That's all one word, Certainty, CERTAINTYLIVE.net. And you'll find all about Frankly Seniors. We'll be right back next week with more of what you need to know.
This has been Frankly Seniors with hosts Frank and Ninon. Tune in each week, Wednesdays, 4 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network, powered by B2 Studios.